words that you put on my heart in this Advent season. The exact words that you would have for these your people. So how many of us still get up to an alarm clock? That sharp jingling noise. We set the alarm clock and turn it on when we went to bed. Then at the exact time, it goes off and wakes you up from a sound sleep. My first alarm clock that I used when I was working summers and through college was not much different from the one that's shown here. It had a little wind-up thing on the back, and you set the alarm with a little switch, and it was loud. Sure to wake you up when it went off. By the time I started my first full-time job, I had purchased a fancy clock radio that would wake me up to soothing music at the appointed time, 5 o'clock. So the boss told me he wanted me in the barn at 6, and I set the alarm for 5:30 and went off to bed. Of course it went off at 5:30 with some type of music that I don't even remember now. And I promptly rolled over, hit the snooze button, and it went back to sleep. The next time that alarm clock went off, there was a loud buzzing sound that jarred me awake. And I rushed to get dressed and off to the barn so that I wouldn't be late. That noise was loud and obnoxious, and I was fearful that it would wake up the baby who was sleeping in the next room. So I vowed to get up when the music came on the next morning. Sure enough, 5:30, the music comes on. And it didn't work very well because I rolled over and hit the snooze button again. The next morning that evening is when I figured out that I had to move the alarm clock to the other side of the room so that when it went off the first time, I'd get out of bed and not just roll over and go back to sleep. As time went on, I got better at waking up earlier in the morning to get to work. And now that I don't have to get up very often, I wake up when the sun comes up. But when I used the alarm clock, most often I was up before it went off. And I would lay in bed and wonder, why hasn't that thing gone off yet? So alarm clocks and waking up are the tools we use to remind us to pay attention. In the season of Advent, we don't usually look for a dramatic awakening of the presence of God in our lives. We prefer to hit the snooze button and let these 4 Sundays of Advent pass without changing our routines for our traditional Christmas season or our perception of what God is doing in our world. But Isaiah offers us an apocalyptic vision of the end of the world that is different from many other visions. He says the nations will stream to the Lord's house on the highest mountaintop, and there God will judge between them and us. His prophecy is the peace prophecy in verse 4. He'll judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. This prophecy inspires us as we enter the Advent season. We can lean into those words so completely, so hopefully. Yet, even though we doubt the reality of them, it's a naive fantasy. We think that there could be peace, but all we see is war and conflict and enemies. The prophecy makes a nice poster to hang in the kids' room, or a pipe dream for those who don't know how the world works. Maybe a Christmas card. But that's about as far as peace will go. But back up a minute. Before we continue with this image of peace, this hope for the world, let's take another look at Isaiah. In verse 1, we're introduced to the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amoz. He was a family person. He worked for the southern kingdom of Judah in its capital city of Jerusalem, which means peace, by the way. It seems almost ironic. Jerusalem, the city of peace, is one of the most contentious areas of the entire planet. How many temples were built there and destroyed? How many walls were built and lines drawn? How many times have the alleys of Jerusalem echoed with soldiers' booted feet and the streets been washed in blood? It's not new, this conflict, this battleground in the city of peace. It's been a place of struggles for centuries. Let's read the verse 1 again. The word that Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Did you hear that? The word that Isaiah saw. He didn't hear it. He saw it. Okay, we know about the prophets. They're a bit different, to say the least. Living out there on the edge, shouting at passers-by and running for their lives. Hiding in caves and calling down fire. Yeah, those things happened to the prophets. They didn't have an easy life. Their main job was holding up mirrors. And no one likes looking too closely at themselves. So no wonder the prophets are not included to the best parties, and they're bounced from the best clubs. No one wanted them around. They preferred to keep them at an arm's length. Except this is Isaiah, offering a different vision of the end of the world as we know it. Nations will stream to the Lord's house on the highest mountaintop. Then and there, God will judge between them and us. He will judge in favor of those who are willing to exchange their weapons of war for influence, to feed others. They will be judged righteous by God, and the world will live in peace. The prophecy from Isaiah is that this is not the time to hit the snooze button. He proclaims that it's time to go to the house of God on the mountain of peace, that is Jerusalem. Isaiah's prophecy is a time for hope. Hope that will bring peace for the community, a community that is often at war with itself and with other external enemies. So let's move on to our gospel reading. Earlier in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus offered several apocalyptic messages for his disciples. The destruction of the temple in verses 1 and 2. The signs of the end of the ages in verses 3 through 8. And coming persecutions in 9 through 14. And finally, of his return in verses 29 through 31. Just before our reading this morning, the disciples have asked him, when will these things occur? I don't know that I can blame them. You want to be awake, you want to be ready. But Jesus cannot give them a solid answer. But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, not the Son, but only the Father. Jesus warns them about hitting the snooze button. The hoped-for peace that comes in the Father's time, will come in the Father's time, and that they must remain watchful. Jesus is telling the disciples and us that it's not time to hit that snooze button. In the letter to the Romans, the author knows that the resurrection of Jesus has begun this process of change for those who follow the risen Christ. It's time to wake up, to lay aside the works that separate people from God and put on the armor of light. The armor of light that shines through Christ's offering of peace for the world. It's time to wake up as Advent begins to take us over again. We must gather not for an empty ritual that doesn't make any difference in the world or in our lives, but that we go to the house of the Lord in the hope of learning peace, and to learn how to live in peace, and how to teach others about peace. Isaiah continued with another prediction. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them the light has shined. Chapter 9, verse 2. And Jesus promised his disciples, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. John chapter 8, verse 12. So Jesus is our light. And we are the people who are ready to wake up and follow that light into this Advent season, bringing hope and peace in our corner of the world. We're being made into disciples. Disciples who make disciples. Disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. That is the Advent proclamation. We're transforming the world in the hope that the whole world can learn and see what peace Jesus Christ brings to each and every one of us. We start here in our faith community, and we extend that light to all of our neighbors and those who meet with us at any time and in any